Hello, everyone. Have you ever heard a story that was so full of lessons that even after hearing it, it keeps lingering in your mind? Today, I want to share with you an incredible story from the Bible that isn't as well known but holds powerful meaning. But that's not all. There's another story waiting at the end of this journey that's just as fascinating, so make sure to stay until the very end. Herein lies the story of the man of God from Judah, from 1 Kings 13 as it unravels. A step into the deep sea moment. The northern kingdom of Israel under the administration of King Jeroboam, who had gone far afield away from God by constructing altars and serving various fake deities, on this particular day is visited by one of the Lord's choice of prophets called simply the man of God with words to forewarn the ruler. Imagine this. The man of God comes to one of these altars about the time King Jeroboam is going to offer a sacrifice. The prophet boldly speaks out. He says the altar will be destroyed, and a child, Josiah, will later be born and will restore proper worship, the sign that these are his words from the Lord. The altar immediately splits open and the ashes spill out. This makes the king irritated. He stretched out his hand to order the arrest of the prophet. Then comes a surprising moment. The hand of Jeroboam withered and could not be moved. Helpless and in shock, the king begs the man of God to pray for his healing. The prophet showed grace and mercy, praying to the Lord to return the king's hand. Amazed by what just transpired, Jeroboam invites the prophet to his palace to give him food and gifts, but the man of God declines. He explains that the Lord gave him express directions. He was not to eat or drink, nor was he to return home by the same route by which he came. It was a test of obedience, and the prophet was bent on carrying out God's order. As the man of God leaves the city, the news of what happened spreads quickly. An old prophet living nearby hears about it and decides to meet him. The old prophet finds the man of God resting under an oak tree and invites him to his home for a meal. At first, the man of God refuses, repeating the command from the Lord. But then, this old prophet said he was given a message from an angel that it was all right for the man of God to come with him. Here is where the story takes a very important turn. The words of the old prophet, believing that he was telling the truth, the man of God agreed to go to his house and eat. As they were eating, the word of the Lord came to the old prophet. He told the man of God that he had disobeyed God's command and that this would have consequences. The man of God did not stop, but continued his journey on. And it is here that probably one of the deepest lessons of the story lies. Under no circumstance whatsoever can the word of God be compromised, even if people appear trustworthy. It is here that the experience of the man of God brings us to the level where we need to hear discerningly, lest what we hear may not be the truth from God. Now, put it into perspective. Why is this story important to us today? It's a question of fidelity to what one knows is right when tugged at to do otherwise. The story of the man of God teaches about listening to God's voice above all other voices and accepting responsibility for one's choices. As we reflect upon this story, here is something to consider. How often do we allow the opinions or actions of others to influence us from what we know to be right? The story of the man of God encourages us to stand firm, even when it is difficult, and to trust in God's guidance for our lives. Thank you all for being here today and exploring this great story with me. But really, this is just the beginning. There's another story I want to share, and it would give a further depth one is searching for. If you're interested in hearing it, please like, comment, share, and subscribe so that we can continue on this journey together. See you next time. Let's dive into another fascinating story from the Bible, one filled with lessons about integrity, justice, and the dangers of greed. This is the story of Naboth and his vineyard, found in 1 Kings 21. The story begins with King Ahab, ruler of Israel, who had a palace in Jezreel. Near this palace was a vineyard owned by a man named Naboth. This vineyard had been in Naboth's family for generations, a precious inheritance passed down through the years. One day, King Ahab decided he wanted the vineyard for himself. He approached Naboth and made him an offer. "Let me buy your vineyard, or I will give you a better one in exchange." But Naboth refused. He told the king, "The Lord forbid that I should give you the inheritance of my ancestors." Naboth's decision wasn't about being difficult. It was about honoring his family and obeying God's laws, which placed great importance on keeping inherited land within the family. King Ahab, however, didn't take the refusal well. He went back to his palace feeling upset and refused to eat. His wife, Queen Jezebel, noticed his gloomy mood and asked him what was wrong. When Ahab told her about Naboth's refusal, Jezebel decided to take matters into her own hands. Jezebel came up with a plan. She wrote letters in the king's name and sealed them with his seal. These letters were sent to the elders and leaders of the city where Naboth lived. The letters instructed them to hold a gathering and place Naboth in a position of honor. Then, 2 witnesses were to accuse him of wrongdoing. These accusations would lead to consequences that would remove Naboth from the situation entirely, making the vineyard available for Ahab. The leaders in the city carried out Jezebel's plan, following her instructions exactly. When Naboth was no longer able to defend his land, Jezebel went to Ahab and told him, "Now you can take possession of the vineyard." Ahab, delighted, went to claim the land for himself. But God saw everything that had happened. The Lord sent the prophet Elijah to confront King Ahab. Elijah found Ahab in the vineyard and delivered a powerful message. "Have you not only taken possession but also acted unjustly? Because of this, there will be consequences for your actions." Elijah's words hit Ahab deeply. The prophet's message reminded him that God values justice and holds people accountable for their choices. The vineyard was more than a piece of land. It was a symbol of Naboth's faithfulness and the respect owed to others. Ahab's response to Elijah's words was one of reflection. He realized the gravity of his actions and humbled himself before God. Ahab's repentance serves as a reminder that even when we make mistakes, turning back to God with a sincere heart can lead to forgiveness and a chance to change. This story of Naboth and his vineyard teaches us many things. First, it shows the importance of standing firm in our values, just as Naboth did when he chose to honor his family's legacy and God's laws. It also highlights the dangers of greed and selfishness, as seen in Ahab and Jezebel's actions. Lastly, it reminds us that God sees all and is a defender of justice, even when things seem unfair in the moment. As you think about this story, consider how it applies to your life. Are there areas where you need to stand firm in your beliefs, like Naboth? Or perhaps there are times when you've let greed or selfishness influence your choices. The good news is that, like Ahab, we all have the opportunity to turn back, learn, and grow. Thank you for listening to this powerful story. But don't go just yet. There's one more incredible tale coming up next, and you won't want to miss it. It's a story full of wisdom and meaning, an extra treat for those of you who love uncovering the hidden gems of the Bible. So stick around and get ready for our final story of the day. Let's dive into the remarkable story of Esther, a woman of great courage and faith, who found herself in a unique position to make a difference for her people. This story is found in the book of Esther and is a tale of bravery, wisdom, and the power of standing up for what's right. The story begins with King Xerxes, ruler of the Persian Empire. He decided to hold a grand banquet, inviting nobles and officials from all over the kingdom to celebrate his wealth and power. During this celebration, Xerxes requested Queen Vashti to appear before his guests, but she refused. This led to Vashti being removed as queen. The search for a new queen began, and women from across the empire were brought to the palace for the king to choose his next queen. Among these women was Esther, a young Jewish woman living in Persia. Esther was raised by her cousin Mordecai, who loved her deeply and taught her the values of their faith. Mordecai advised Esther to keep her Jewish identity a secret when she was taken to the palace. Esther quickly gained favor in the palace with her kindness and grace. When the time came for King Xerxes to choose a new queen, he selected Esther, making her the queen of Persia. Though she held this high position, she continued to trust Mordecai's guidance and remained humble. Meanwhile, Mordecai discovered a plot against the king. Two of the king's guards were planning to harm him. Mordecai informed Esther, and she told the king, giving credit to Mordecai. This act of loyalty was recorded in the royal chronicles, but not immediately rewarded. At the same time, a man named Haman rose to power in the kingdom. Haman was a high-ranking official who became angry when Mordecai refused to bow to him. Mordecai's refusal wasn't out of disrespect, but rather because of his devotion to God. Haman, filled with pride and anger, decided not only to punish Mordecai, but also to create a plan to harm all the Jewish people in the empire. Haman convinced King Xerxes to issue a decree allowing this plan, framing it as a necessary action for the good of the kingdom. The decree caused great distress among the Jewish people. When Mordecai learned of it, he tore his clothes and cried out in sorrow. He sent a message to Esther urging her to go to the king and plead for their people. This was no small request. In those days, approaching the king without being summoned could result in severe consequences, even for the queen. Esther was understandably afraid, but Mordecai reminded her that she might have been placed in her position for such a time as this. These words gave Esther the courage she needed to act. Esther asked Mordecai and the Jewish people to fast and pray for 3 days. She did the same, seeking wisdom and strength. After this time, she went before the king, risking everything to save her people. When King Xerxes saw Esther, he extended his scepter, signaling that she was welcome to approach. Esther invited the king and Haman to a banquet she had prepared. During the meal, the king asked Esther what she wanted, promising to grant her request, even up to half the kingdom. But Esther didn't reveal her request yet. Instead, she invited them to a second banquet the following day. At this second banquet, King Xerxes again asked Esther what she desired. This time, Esther revealed her Jewish heritage and explained the danger her people were facing because of Haman's decree. She asked the king to save her life and the lives of her people. The king was shocked and furious when he learned of Haman's plot. He took immediate action to protect Esther and her people. A new decree was issued, allowing the Jewish people to defend themselves against any harm. Mordecai was honored by the king and given a position of great authority. The Jewish people celebrated their deliverance with joy and gratitude. This story teaches us the importance of courage, faith, and using the opportunities we're given to make a difference. Esther's bravery reminds us that even in the face of fear, we can stand up for what's right. Her actions not only saved her people, but also showed the power of trusting in God's plan. As we reflect on Esther's story, think about the moments in your life where you might be called to stand up for someone else or take a bold step. Sometimes we're placed in specific situations for such a time as this, just like Esther. Thank you for joining me on this journey through these incredible stories from the Bible. I hope they've inspired you as much as they inspire me. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who could use a bit of encouragement today. There are so many more stories waiting to be told, and I can't wait to explore them with you. See you next time.